Hey, what's going on guys? RVZ Stealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to give you my opinion on the best mid lane champions for Season 4, Patch 4.19. First up on my list, I have Xerath. So Xerath is pretty much arguably the best poke champion, or the best AP poke champion in the game right now. He's basically just a better version of Ziggs because he's got longer range than Ziggs, he's got better CC than Ziggs, and he's just all around a better champion. So if you're looking for a poke AP mid laner, then I would definitely recommend picking up Xerath because he's arguably the best at that right now. Pros to Xerath are he's got super long range, he's got really good CC on his W and his E, and if I'm not mistaken, the longer his E travels, the longer it stuns for. His ultimate also chunks late game, and if you can hit all three of your ultimates on an enemy squishy come late game, you're pretty much going to chunk them down to around 3/4 of their HP. He's strong at all stages in the game. He is the best poke champion right now in my opinion, and his passive is also really strong for laning because you don't ever run out of mana when playing Xerath because of his passive, and you can just stay in lane and get all your CS because of that. He's also got really strong wave clear because of his Q and his W, probably the best wave clear in the game right now. Cons to Xerath are he doesn't have any mobility, so you have to be careful about your positioning in teamfights because if you get caught out as Xerath, then he's basically, there's no point in playing him if you don't have good positioning because you won't be able to get any damage off in teamfights. His ultimate can also be hard to land, and when I first started playing Xerath, I could barely land one of my 3 ultimates, so I definitely recommend practicing Xerath in some normal games before heading into ranked with him, because if you can't land your ultimate, then it's basically wasting a skill, and you don't really want to have that on a champion. He's also an all skill shot champion, so if skill shots aren't your thing, then I definitely wouldn't recommend playing Xerath. Next up on my list, I have Zed. Pros to Zed are he's got insane burst. Come late game when Zed gets his full build, as long as the enemy isn't building Zhonya's or Quicksilver Sash, then Zed can instantly kill enemy squishy champions. He's pretty hard to zone in lane with because he's got his Q, which he can use to CS with. He's got a really strong level 6 all-in as well because his ultimate gives him a really big power spike. He's got insane mobility with his W and his ultimate, and he's really hard to get caught out with because of his W. He's also a really strong split pusher because if you get fed as Zed, you can pretty much 1v1 any champion in the game, which makes him a really strong split pusher. He's also easy to CS under tower with, or it's easy to CS under tower as Zed because of his passive. If you didn't know, enemies or minions that are below 40% HP, I'm pretty sure it's 40%, you do a certain amount of increased damage to them. Cons to Zed are Zhonya's and Quicksilver Sash counters him really hard. I wouldn't recommend playing Zed into champions like Fizz or Syndra, champions that will build Zhonya's, unless you're really confident in your Zed play, because it's basically reducing your options of who you can use your ultimate on, which isn't the best. He's also got pretty weak CC, and he's really weak when behind because what you want to do as Zed is you want to burst down an enemy champion and get out of there really quickly after doing so, and if he doesn't have his items, he won't be able to do that, making him pretty much useless. Next on my list, I have Ahri. Pros to Ahri are she's got really strong pick potential with her charm, and right now Ahri is pretty much my go-to champion for mid lane because of the pick potential. If your team is behind, you can always come back when you're playing Ahri because if you know the champion well and you're able to land your charm, then you can just turn the game right around by landing one. She's also got insane mobility with her ultimate, and it's really hard to get caught out with her because of that. She's also got really good poke in lane because of her Q. It does true damage on the way back, so it's a really strong poke ability, and it also doesn't cost very much mana. She also has pretty good sustain in lane with her passive, and she can just stay in lane and keep farming up because of that. Cons to Ahri is she is very skill shot reliant, so I wouldn't recommend playing her if you can't land your charm because number one, it's a really good pick potential ability, and if you're not landing that, then you're missing out on a lot of Ahri's kit, and number two, it increases the damage of all your other abilities, so you're missing out on a lot of damage as well if you can't land Ahri's charm. So next up on my list, I have Syndra. Pros to Syndra are she's a super strong laner. She's got really good poke in lane. She can also move while using her Q, and a lot of people don't think of this when they're playing Syndra, but it's a really good pro to her because she can just keep cutting back and using her Q to get a lot of damage off. She has insane single target burst as well with her ultimate, and she's pretty much a press R to win champion in my opinion. Whenever I'm playing against the Syndra and I get stunned, I pretty much know I'm dead because she can just use her Q, she can just use her stun and then pop her ultimate, and you're basically screwed if you're a squishy champion. She has a super long range stun, which is really strong for picking out enemies, and it's also got a really long width on it, so it can hit multiple targets as well. She's got pretty good CC with her stun and her W, and Consta Syndra, is she has no mobility, so like Xerath, in teamfights you gotta make sure that you are either saving your stun for when an enemy is going to engage on you, or that you're staying back and making sure that you're keeping a good distance. She's also weak against tanky champions because Syndra relies on bursting down an enemy squishy really quickly, and if the enemy team doesn't have squishy champions, then it pretty much defeats the purpose of playing Syndra. Zhonya's also counters her pretty hard because they can just press Zhonya's when you're channeling your ultimate, and Fizz is also a really hard counter to Syndra because what a good Fizz player will do, and I quote good, is they will use their E when you're channeling your ultimate, and it will completely negate all of your damage. And Fizz can also dodge your stun by using his E, so if you're looking for a champion to counter Syndra, then I'd recommend playing Fizz. You just gotta make sure that you survive the early game and don't get poked down too much as Fizz, and then once you hit level 6, you can pretty much beat Syndra really easily. Number 1 on my list for 2 patches in a row now is going to be Fizz. Pros to Fizz are he's got insane burst with his ultimate, his E, and his Q. It just brings for crazy amounts of damage. He also has a CC initiation on his ultimate, which is really unique, and it's really strong because of that. He can use it from a really long range, and because it slows the champion, it makes it really easy for Fizz to jump on them after that. He's also super slippery because he has his Zhonya's and the invulnerability on his E, and if you don't know what slippery means, it basically means it's really hard to target the certain champion, and Fizz is probably the slipperiest champion in the game because it's just so hard to focus him in team fights because of his Zhonya's and his E. He's also really easy to play in my opinion because his ultimate is his only skill shot ability, and once you can get that down and you can make sure that you get it off on the enemy squishy champion in team fights, then he becomes really easy to play. He's also strong at all stages in the game. Late game, he's got really insane burst, and as long as you don't get poked down for the first few levels, then once you hit level 3 as Fizz, you can all in really well because he's got just a lot of damage from his E and his Q, and then pair that with Ignite, and you can pretty much 1v1 any champion in the game as long as he hasn't got poked down before he hits level 3. He's also got a short cooldown on his ultimate, which is really strong because you can either use it to gain lane dominance, you can just use it on your opponent and then just be able to free farm, or you can use it when you're roaming, which is usually what I like to do. And I try to roam a lot as Fizz whenever my ultimate's up because you're pretty much guaranteed a kill, and once I hit level 6, I like to roam down bottom lane if the enemy team is pushing because you're guaranteed at least 1 kill as long as the enemy team isn't warded like really deep. So if the enemy team is pushing bot lane into your tower, then definitely look for a roam down bottom lane once you hit level 6. Cons to Fizz are he is weak against some ranged champions pre-6. For example, Ryze, Syndra, Xerath, they're 3 champions that do counter him pre-6 because they can poke him down, and if you're playing Fizz, you just want to make sure that you don't get poked down before you hit level 3, and then when you hit level 3, you want to try to go for an all-in on the enemy champion because a lot of enemy mid laners who are ranged, like Xerath and Syndra, are super squishy, and as long as you don't get poked down, pre-level 3, then you can all-in them really easily. Another con to him is he can also get shut down early, and you just want to make sure that you're starting Crystalline Flask if you are in those matchups where the enemy is going to poke you down, because as long as you can survive the laning phase and you don't get poked down, then he becomes a monster late game and he snowballs really hard, which is why he is number 1 on my list. So honorable mentions for this patch include Katarina, Akali, and Orianna. I have Katarina and Akali on honorable mentions instead of on my list because they do have a lot of counters in lane, and they can get, like, for example, Xerath, Syndra, any ranged champion can shut down Katarina and Akali early game because they can just poke them down and zone them really hard. So I wouldn't recommend picking Katarina and Akali into champions that have a lot of poke because you won't be able to fare very well in the laning phase. But if you can get a few kills on these champions and you can roam at level 6, then they're really strong and they snowball really hard and can carry games really easily if you can get fed. I also have Orianna on honorable mentions because she has a really strong ultimate, which is game changing. If you can get your ultimate off on Orianna in team fights on multiple targets, then it's just gonna pretty much guarantee you that team fight win if your team is ahead. So she's a really strong champion, and she's also got a lot of utility with her W and her E as well. So any of these champions are strong, but they just didn't make my list. So that is all for the video, guys. If you enjoyed, then be sure to like and subscribe for more League of Legends content. And if you're wondering why I didn't include a certain champion on my list, then be sure to comment below asking me why, and I'll get back to you shortly on that. But as always, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video.